Mark Zuckerberg is tired of losing, but Apple does not care.
Welcome to the All Future Podcast, where we talk about everything Apple, humanoid robots, AI, and anything in the future you can think of.
Mm-hmm.
That's not true. I was thinking, we have no limits of the things that we talk about, but we totally do.
Yeah, there's limits.
Yeah. I don't want to talk about crazy stuff or the way out there stuff. I don't want to spout politics at people or things like that. So
yeah, we're just here to talk about technology and where it's going into the future.
And if you like that kind of thing, without all those kinds of things that we talked about, you should think about subscribing.
Yeah, we would very much appreciate it.
And first, before we talk about Zuckerberg losing and not liking it, we're going to talk about a new Apple app that got leaked that will be in iOS 18.3.
Yeah. This is called the Invites app, or whatever name they're going to end up calling it. But basically, it seems like it's a place to organize larger events. It's kind of like the function that you kind of can do through the Apple Calendar, but I think it's going to be much improved and better and more organized for meetings and for group video calls and stuff like that. I also wouldn't be surprised if it ends up functioning as something where, for, I don't know, like an Evite. You know, you've used that for organizing
of course,
your parties and stuff.
It seems like an easy thing for Apple to integrate. All your contacts are there. All your things are there. Now they have these little art design things that they can do. And so
it's true.
If it's your birthday party and you want to keep people in there and then have it organized, especially because you've done group chats or things like that. So
yeah,
if you want to message... The problem with the Evite system now is everyone gets an email, and how often do emails get lost or some things like that. So if you have to communicate some piece of information the party got moved from 7 to 8, and you just have a list of people that you can text in messages or something like that, way easier system. Or if it knows that I'd like to email these people and not text them, or I'd like to text them and not email them this update. That's a big deal. If you have all these people in your contacts and you have both of those points of contact, then Apple can just choose what kind of, information you'd like to message them where, which is super convenient, right? If the thing changes on the day of that you need to text every single person in that group.
Yeah.
But if it's something that's a month away, that could be an email, you don't have to, it's not urgent. So
yeah, it's always interesting to see the ways that Apple is working on things, or I guess introducing apps that we kind of think, was there a need for that? Were we asking for that? But it seems like someone on the back end is going, hey, I'm tired of doing this manually. We can make this app and just make it better. And then eventually we'll probably be using it and be happy that it exists.
Yeah, that's the best way to make apps, I think, is when something's annoying to you and you go, well, if it's annoying to me, then it's annoying to everyone. And people try to take these big swings now, we're going to do this thing and it's going to change everything. And it's I don't need everything changed. I want little annoyances taken out of my life. And if you do them one at a time, that's okay. And that's what things kind of used to be too. Shazamming a song and then they just buy the app anyways.
Yeah.
Just find solutions that people are using anyways and just buy those or make those. So yeah, this will be a good little add-on, nothing wrong with that. And I always just like Apple introducing new things. That's not a bad thing. If you're locked into the ecosystem, you want them to be upkeeping it and not just letting it degrade over time, so
yeah. And one thing they could be replacing with this, I guess, would be the Facebook invite.
Yes, yeah, that's true.
Which brings us to Mark Zuckerberg.
And then speaking of the Apple ecosystem in general, that's what Mark Zuckerberg is complaining about in this. So he says that they're trying to develop their Meta Wayfarer glasses, their Meta Ray-Bans, to be able to use things like Apple Messenger, and Apple does not want to let them use it, and they claim that it's a security issue. And so Apple has claimed things are security issues all over the place in the name of just, ecosystem locking things, especially to the EU Court of Regulations over there, that it's a privacy issue that they can't do things. But it certainly ends up in Apple's favor every time that they do it, because they buy themselves as much time as they need to just make that product themselves. And Zuckerberg even claims that that's exactly what's going to happen. So everyone's smart. Everyone knows what's going to happen with these things, and they choose to push forward and do them anyways. And I think what he's really focusing on is for this to be a good product to the WhatsApp market, which everyone in Europe uses WhatsApp. So this we barely use it here in the United States. If you don't know what it is, then it's like a messenger service that's free that uses cell data instead of text messages, when text messages used to cost money all the time. And so a lot of people in Europe are on WhatsApp and all over the world. And so I think everywhere that people use WhatsApp, this product will be much bigger than in the United States, where everyone either uses Android or Apple Messenger.
And now we do have RCS integrated through, I mean, Android's been using it, but now we have that integrated and supported with Apple devices. So it's that much easier to text your friends with the green bubble still. But yeah, it's much better than it used to be. Getting those messages, you now get read receipts from Android users, all that stuff. So yeah, there's many reasons for us not to need to switch to something like WhatsApp. And that's why I don't know, part of why it hasn't become as big in the United States, it feels like.
It doesn't feel as annoying here either to have to deal with those things. Like, I don't mind getting green text bubbles. It was just annoying when you would get them, like, you would send a group chat and then it like literally has to create another group chat just for that person who had a green bubble. And so, yeah, like ecosystem lock is a big thing here. They do allow it here. It is annoying. It is annoying to everyone, who's forced to, you'd like to use the best app for the situation. And that's why I think everyone lands onto Apple, or a lot of people do, is because it's just like has enough of the things you need without letting in some of the bad stuff that you don't. And, we'll see, because we have all that EU regulation that's deregulating Apple and making it so they have to, have a third-party app store, and you have to allow more apps on the phone. You have to open these things up. They even had one in the United States. It was a lawsuit where they had to open up the Watch iOS so the Apple Watch can start to be used with other devices that aren't the Apple Watch. And if we really want to hammer in these things that like we have to use these devices separately, then we have to decide that that's what we're going to do and have to make it used with everything. But like an iPhone starts to suck when you are going to use it with an Android that can only do certain things with it. So if it's not going to integrate fully, it almost like doesn't matter. So it's weird. It's a weird road.
Yeah, it's a tough thing to regulate because it's just like that. We love the features of how it all integrates. And how are they going to regulate it to where it's like, well, we still allow, you still get the best experience when you're integrating the two together, but you get less features if you're using it with another device? Is that what it's going to be? Or are they going to make it has to be the same no matter which mix of devices you're using? And we see this throughout everything. I mean, right now I've been researching a bunch universal audio interfaces, and they kind of have like this ecosystem lock that a lot of like audio engineers, they love the product, but it's kind of locks you into what they're doing in their plugins. You need their hardware to do it, even though technically it's like, couldn't this work with other stuff? And so it feels like that same kind of thing where you get locked in, and that's very intentional on the company's part, but it ends up making a better product and a better product experience as the consumer. But it's interesting to hear Mark Zuckerberg say that, because you've talked before, like, just make these glasses support iMessage, just make them do this. And his angle is like, we want to.
Yeah, exactly. I'm sure they want to, And it's just good to hear him say it out loud. He also talked about AI being open source, which Meta is famously one of the companies when OpenAI had their closed LLMs going on with ChatGPT. He open sourced Llama and tried to not beat them with the open source, but make it so they could be less competitive with their model. And so if Llama is free and available to everyone and ChatGPT is closed, what's the point of using ChatGPT if everyone can use Llama? Mark can have all that data for himself at Facebook and train his LLMs better. He's already sitting on a treasure trove of data between Instagram and Facebook and WhatsApp. Like, you have all those messages to actually, see how people talk and respond with each other. But he did mention the extreme importance of open sourcing AI and having open source models, which leads into our next story, that at the University of Berkeley, the Nova Sky team just released the Sky T1 32B preview, which is getting results almost as similar, right beneath ChatGPT 4.0, which is the current best model out there, and then beats every other model that's underneath, which would be things like Llama or Claude or even Gemini 2. And so you have an open sourced from even a university now that is right neck and neck with these LLMs that are coming out.
Yeah, and I think this was also, it didn't take them much time and didn't have a ton of training or cost behind it, right?
Yeah, apparently it only took 19 hours and cost $450. And this was a model that was modeled after one of Alibaba's LLMs. It's called Quen.
Okay.
So they were piggybacking off of another open source LLM. And yeah, everyone's in this race. We've talked about this before, but anyone in a big tech company is creating their own LLM, from Salesforce to Amazon to, OpenAI is going to be, they're the top dog, but they're going to be irrelevant eventually if they don't figure out other ways to keep relevancy, like either hardware or things like that. Which is another thing we could talk about, that OpenAI announced a robotics division, and
makes sense.
I think they know, because they've talked about in the past that they want some kind of device. They've hired Johnny Ive, who's famously, an Apple designer, designed a bunch of very famous products for Apple.
Yeah.
He's working for OpenAI now, and they're trying to figure out their robotics division. So they have now gone from LLMs and everything LLM to try to compete directly with NVIDIA, which NVIDIA right now is the king of robotics and robotics training. Not necessarily the building of robotics, but the software and the processing and the GPUs of robotics that robots will need to train in the digital world and train in the real world. And so that's what I think they're going after here.
Yeah, OpenAI has partnered with Figure, and I think that's been the big robot that we at least see and they give demos of. And it's been very impressive because Tesla's out there giving us their Optimus demos, and they're controlling the hardware and software of that. And then OpenAI came out and was like, oh, here's this robot by Figure. It's doing a lot of the same stuff. It's very capable, and it's using AI just the same, but it also can talk. And they had very good demos of that talking. And I think having a conversation with someone who is telling them to pick up an Apple, still very basic stuff, but it shows how much they're working in that space already. And now they're just actually expanding with their own division instead of partnering. I'm sure they'll continue partnering with Figure, but they're also going to be working on their own robotics.
Yeah, I think this is further off than we think it is. When did Elon's talking about delivering 100,000 robots next year or this year? Or yeah, and so it's not that those goals aren't realistic. Elon's going to do what Elon's going to do, but can those robots do the things that he says they're going to do yet? We haven't really seen a demo out there. CES was full of all these robots walking around, sort of being able to right themselves. And that's cool in its own right. If you need to transport stuff off, I don't understand their use cases yet.
Yeah.
I understand patrolling, but we've had the Spot Dog from Boston Dynamics for years, you know? So if you need to do a patrol, or the use case they gave is we want to check out this radiation site, and so we need the dog who can go through and walk through all these places, but still you can't get a human in there, so we can use all this data. Yeah, I understand the use cases that way, but we haven't really seen the jump from robot that can walk to robot that can do something useful.
Yeah.
That's shaped like a human. It's not like we haven't built a car arm factory thing.
Oh, yeah.
Those are always useful and in controlled environments. But this is two-stage, which is can it be remote operated, and can it AI deal with everything in the real world by itself and complete a task?
Yeah, absolutely. So the job listings for this apparently say it's for general purpose robots that operate in dynamic real world settings, and then it specifically also adds a wide variety of robotic form factors. So basically, this is just general. They're just entering the space. Maybe they're going to make a version of Apple's tablet with a rotating arm for some sort of home AI assistant, all the way up to humanoid robots.
If they can get that to work, if anyone can get that to work, it'll be a reason to actually switch. I think if you get those voice assistants that can actually know what you're talking about, that actually have context, that can do what you say most of the time. If you beat Siri like, 1 out of 2 times and you're beating Siri on her being able to hear you correctly. Oh, I just said it. Sorry, everyone at home. And you're actually using these models to, like improve devices in the ecosystem. Google or OpenAI, anyone will have like a real chance at stealing that entire market and then people switching over. Because right now, we've talked about this in almost every video that we do, how Siri's great at some things and it's just consistently fails at others.
Yeah. And I'm using it all the time. I have my whole home as like a home-kitted home, and it's awesome, but it's like embarrassing when people come over and I give a Siri command and it doesn't understand, especially people who are like a little bit skeptical on smart home stuff. It's like you have to go, no, I promise, most of the time it works.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, does most of the time it work? I don't know.
They're like, how much money did you spend on all this stuff?
Yeah. And the voice, it's just some of the commands it gets wrong. It's just unacceptable at this point. So I'm hopeful for a future 2.0 Siri or whatever, but the voice that you get in the ChatGPT app is really incredible at understanding you and being able to converse in natural language. So if they can get there, apply that, and beat other people with some products, yeah.
I had a weird, I have ChatGPT, the paid version. I use the advanced voice mode. I had a weird version where it was like gaslighting me. And I'm like, no, I know this is correct. So I love cooking, right? And so there's an Italian base for a lot of stuff called the sofrito, and it's just celery, carrots, and onions, right? And I always forget like how many parts. It's 2 parts onions to 1 part celery and carrot, right? Not important. It's just like a base of a soup. And so there's 2 dishes in the world called sofrito, right? There is a apparently like South American stew and this Italian base of stuff. And so I was asking it, like, what are the ratios for sofrito? And it's like, you use tomato sauce and all these other things. And I'm like, no, for Italian sofrito, like, what do you do? And then it just kept going, like, you use tomato sauce and this and this and that. And I'm like, the Italian base of vegetables for making soup and other things like that.
Yeah.
What is it? And it's like, it starts with tomato and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, it was my first time where I'm like, this thing is lying to me. I know. And then I had to like, just for myself, I'm like, it's called that, right? It's called that. I'm not going crazy. And so I looked it up and I Googled it. And it's like, yeah, Italian sofrito right here.
Yeah.
And then
and the AI summary got it right on Google probably.
Yeah. And I'm like, what's going on with this thing? Like, there are things that can definitely improve where it's like, if I'm telling you and coming back at you with like, this isn't correct, like maybe just look into it or whatever. Like just double check yourself or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's really good at pushing that whatever its narrative is the right narrative. So don't always trust your AI, everyone out there.
Definitely not. And speaking of AIs and competitors in this space, there's the one from Elon Musk coming from XAI. And they've actually expanded quite a bit here because there's a standalone Grok app now available.
Which means there's hopefully a standalone Grok Tesla app coming in the future too.
Yeah.
Which would be incredible.
I think that's what they're going to do, integrating the built-in voice assistant, because there's a basic voice command system now, but it's very much you have to say the right command, and it's pretty robust. Like they have different commands that all can trigger the same things, but it's not great. And then obviously there's no conversing or no information you can get beyond that. So the idea is that, they'd integrate this into the car so that you have your built-in to the car voice assistant that you could be asking questions about things, or probably I would love to see car things like a route planner that's like, do this and this and this. I want to arrive with this percentage and I want to charge this many times. Oh, I like this charger. Make sure this is one of those chargers on the way. And then it routes that all for you.
That'd be super cool. For anyone who doesn't know at home, like Tesla will automatically route you to specific chargers, and the quality of chargers, just say on the 5 in California, is like massively different. You can get one that's just like, in the middle of a desert or a shopping center that doesn't have anything, and you can get one that's like the best barbecue restaurant you've ever eaten at.
Yeah.
And they're like within 10 miles of each other, and whether you charged there didn't matter or not, you know? So yeah, that would be amazing. I would love to see just basic The other thing about Tesla, if you've never used one before, is that like their menu system is pretty robust. It's almost like owning a camera with like a bunch of menus in it. But there's a real learning curve to like figuring out how to get around it. So if you can really use like, they have something like spotlight search on it, so you can go like brake lights or something, and it'll pop up with the thing you need. But if you could do that with a voice assistant, it'd be really cool. Like I know someone like my mom, if she ever got a Tesla, or my wife would appreciate like, I can't find the button to open the glove box because it's in the menus, you know, which is always a ridiculous thing that people talk about with Teslas.
Yeah.
But yeah, to be able to go like, hey, open the glove box, and then it knows it's coming from you, or like your key card is already in the thing, so it's a little more secure than, you know, just any random person saying it.
To be fair, you can open the glove box today with a voice command.
Oh, can you?
Yes.
Oh, Ryan knows more than me about this stuff, so he's always
But
gonna one-up me.
I see your point. I see, the next level of stuff like that. That's
I'm gonna go try that right now.
Yeah, go for it. But the thing of voice commands too is sometimes the connectivity is not great. So if it could be internally running, that would be amazing. But we'll see where we get with that. But this did bring me to think about a point. So with Grok, you have, that's XAI's version of an LLM and everything that they're building as a competitor, and that is Elon Musk. And Elon Musk has his huge haters, and he has people that will defend him to the end of the earth. Does Mark Zuckerberg have the same? Because I just find this the interview to be, I see a lot of clips, and I think it's funny, and to think like, I just don't know anyone. Are there people out there that are like diehard Zucker fans? I
don't think so.
Yeah.
I think once people found out the level that Facebook and Instagram knew about them, and I learned Facebook ads like, I don't know, 8 years ago now, like when I was working on all this tech stuff and the YouTube channels and really learning data science and like those sorts of things. And I was like floored at the public tools you can use to look at things, which they've since removed. And it would just be like I used it for fans of bands or something like that. So who's fans of this band, or like Green Day, pick a band or something, right? Green Day. And then it'll be like, well, if you're a fan of Green Day, you're 10 times more likely to drink Pepsi instead of Coke. And if you're a fan of Green Day, like you're most likely going to shop at Rite Aid and not Walgreens. And if you're a fan of Green Day, like, and it would give you this list of things, and it would give you all these correlations between like that type of person and things you would never even think to correlate.
Yeah.
And it would give you all this data on how to sell product to people.
Crazy.
And I think once that information became more public, people lost trust in the company that have enough wherewithal. Like, I feel like Facebook's audience now is like the older generation who doesn't know how to use anything else. So they don't mind the privacy invasion because like that's all they know how to use. But for people who have options and want to like move to other, things, I think they stop trusting him. And it's not like those old people trust Facebook either. It's just that they don't know. But Apple has this such sense of like, we're doing everything to make sure like your data's secure and that your phone's secure. And so I think they just, having that public persona is really important to them. And then these are going to be like a bunch of little criticisms. I'm going to say them because I think they all matter. I don't think Mark Zuckerberg is great at doing interviews. I don't think he comes across as genuine. I think like Steve Jobs always did come across as genuine, whether he's saying something nice or not. There's like famously, like when the antenna on one of the iPhones wasn't working correctly, Steve Jobs holding it up and it says, "You're holding it wrong." And so he's like, literally criticizing his audience, and everyone just loves him for it. Whereas like, I think Mark Zuckerberg tries to be liked, and that comes across as inauthentic. And these are, I don't know Mark Zuckerberg. I've seen a lot of interviews of him. And I watched this whole Rogan interview. He's talking about jujitsu and like being into MMA and stuff like that. I think he's coming out of his shell a little bit after 20 years of doing interviews or whatever. And I don't think it's an easy position to be in to run these companies. No one's going to like you. You have to make a lot of bad decisions. And so I think he's gaining a little steam in like the Meta glasses and that version. But I don't think he's taking as much responsibility for the bad things. And then even, I don't want to get political, but I think people feel like in the middle of him talking about privacy things that he's sort of flip-flopping, that he was for people, before this administration took over, and now this administration took over. Oh, well, now he's changing all his ideals and saying like, well, this is what we wanted to do the whole time. There's just this other administration. So that's why I don't think someone like Elon, love him or hate him, and I'm sure we'll get all the haters in the comments, which is fine. We're not lovers either. As much as we talk about Tesla stuff, right down the middle, right? Like he does things that aren't good and he does things that are good, and you sort of have to live with that because it pushes technology forward, and the things that are good, you know, mostly outweigh the bad things or whatever. But you know, so love him or hate him, you know his opinion on everything, and he doesn't falter what he thinks for the most part.
For the most
and
part, yeah.
What he says comes true for the most part, you know. So don't listen to him on Full Self-Driving, but you know, he said he was going to deliver, you know, like when he said he was going to deliver the stock, there was a big controversy about how much he got paid because he created all these crazy benchmarks for himself that no one thought were possible, and said, yeah, sure, if you can grow the company like 100x, then of course we'll give you this crazy bonus. And no one thought they would do it, and then he did it.
Yeah.
So anyways, that's my feeling on Zuckerberg and Elon and the differences.
Yeah.
Very polarizing Elon. Zuckerberg polarizing in the way where it sounds like he doesn't want to make a mistake.
Yeah. Well, if you're a Zuckerberg fan, it's likely you didn't make it this far in this video. But leave a comment below and let us know, because I am curious, like who are the Zuckerberg defenders out there? And I don't think I see many people loving the guy, but he's obviously still the CEO of a massive company that is contributing in all of these ways and open sourcing AI. So they're a big part of the future.
I'll say I like him. I think he's a smart person, and the stuff that he does talk about when he's talking about authentically is stuff that I resonate with. But running a company like Facebook, doing what Facebook does, it's hard to be liked by anyone.
Yeah.
Like literally the business model is taking your private features to sell you products. Like, so if you're that guy that does that thing and you're the face of that, it's not easy for people to like.
Yeah. So the war between Apple and Meta continues.